Good day, ma'am. I am Queen Reason Sai, and this is my reflection about the scenario public disturbance and disorderly conduct. Question number one is: when should officer use verbal command and physical command? Police officers should follow a continuum of force using the minimum amount force necessary to solve the situation. In the scenario, police officers apply force because of the aggressive and active resistance of the arrested person. Number two is: what are the legal basis for arrest in the scenario? The legal basis for arresting Mr. Book in the scenario is in flagrante delicto, or a warrantless arrest, because he is caught committing a crime tumultuous disturbance under the Article 153 of the Revised Penal Code. In addition, the person arrested must be informed of his rights, including the right to remain silent and the right to counsel. Question number three is: how should the officer ensure the safety both of the suspect and the public? The police officer should protect the suspect's head and neck when restraining to prevent head and neck injury. And the officer should clear the area to prevent injury and harm to the bystanders and provide an exit route. In addition, the police officer must stay alert and aware. Thank you.
Good day, ma'am. I'm Angelica P. Adjaga, and this is my reflection about our scenario. The first question is: when should officer use verbal commands versus physical restraint? First is verbal commands. Officers should initially use verbal commands to de-escalate the situation, understand the suspect actions, and attempt to gain compliance. Verbal commands are appropriate when the suspect behavior is disruptive but not immediately physical threatening. They should be used as long as the suspect is responding to them or if there is a chance to de-escalate the situation. Second is physical restraint. Physical restraint becomes more necessary when the verbal commands fail to achieve compliance. It's justified when the suspect possesses an immediate threat to themselves or others. It also justified when the suspect is actively resisting arrest. In this scenario, Book's action created a dangerous situation justifying the use of handcuffs and physical control to prevent further harm, especially after throwing the chicken at Officer Iscaro. The second question is: what legal basis allows for an arrest in this scenario? Several legal bases could justify Book's arrest. First is disorderly conduct. Book's loud, aggressive behavior and throwing objects in a public place disrupted the peace and order of the market. Second is assault. Book's act of throwing objects, particularly the chicken which nearly hit Officer Iscaro, constitute an assault. Third is property damage. Book's actions resulted in damage to Kasuyon fish stalls and potentially other vendors' property. Fourth is public intoxication, or the under of the influence of alcohol or drugs. If it becomes apparent that Book is under the influence of drug or alcohol, that would be another legal basis for an arrest. Because the incident happened in Himamaylan City, the local ordinance and the Philippine Revised Penal Code would be the source in the specific laws that were broken. The third question is: how should the officer ensure the safety of both suspect and the public? First is public safety. The officer immediately worked to secure the scene and pushing back the crowd and creating space to prevent the further injuries. They acted quickly to restrain Book, minimizing the time he could cause harm. Second is suspect safety. Even while restraining Book, the officer needed to avoid excessive force, using only what necessary to subdue him. After handcuffing Bock, they needed to monitor his condition, checking for injuries and ensuring he could breathe properly. They offered him water and informed of his rights. Transporting him to the police station in a safe manner is also important. And the last is general safety. Documenting of all actions and evidence is also important to the safety of all involved. This documentation will be used in any legal proceedings that follow. Thank you, ma'am.
Good day, ma'am. I'm Javella Estrosales, and this is my reflection about public disturbance. Number one question: when should officers use verbal commands versus physical restraint? Officers Osorio and Descaro employed verbal commands at this scenario when they hear the victim Javella and Dunsay yelling for assistance due to a distraction between their markets. Initially, officers employ their cognitive abilities to minimize the disturbance caused by the suspect balk. They started telling the suspect to relax. However, the suspect continued to yell and toss the fishes in victims' market, refusing to comply with other orders. Physical restraint became necessary when Bok refused to comply with verbal commands and increased his behavior. Bo continued to take risky moves in order to prevent harm. The officers used to physical control and chain the suspect. Number two question: when legal basis allows for an arrest in this scenario? Disorderly books destroyed public. Number two question: what legal basis allows for an arrest in this scenario? Books destroy public setting and disturb the marketplaces. Bok committed assault when he threw objects, especially the fishes, with almost struck Officer Iscaro. Javela and Hunsai Fishes stall, as well as possibly the property of other merchants, was damaged as a result of Bok's actions. Bok could be arrested on additional grounds if it turns out that he is under the influence of drink. The Philippines revised the Philippine Revised Code The Philippine Revised Penal Code, the local ordinances shall be the source of specific laws that were broken because the incident took place in Himamaylan City. Number three question: how can the officers make sure the public and the suspect are safe? In order to prevent more injuries, the officers moved quickly to ensure the area and pushing back the crowd. They took prompt action to restrain Bo, reducing the amount of time and he could be dangerous. In order to obtain accurate reports of the events, they collected witness statements. The cops had to use only the bare minimum of force to subdue Book, avoiding overuse even while he was being restrained. They had to keep an eye on Book's condition after handcuffing him, making sure he could breathe and looking for any injuries. They explained his rights to him. It's also critical to get him safely to police station.
Good morning, Mom. I am George Descaro, and this is my reflection for our scenario. Verbal command should always be used in first with physical restraint, only then necessary to prevent harm or restore order. In this case, the officer followed the legal procedures to arrest Book for disorderly conduct, assault, and property damage and potential extortion. They prioritized the safety in both the public and Book through de-escalation and careful restraint. This approach demonstrates the professionalism and adherence to legal standards in maintaining order and protecting involved.
Reflections. Which should officers use verbal commands versus physical restraint? Verbal commands, officers Osorio and Scaro initially used verbal commands to try and lessen the situation. They started using their strategies by telling the suspect both to calm down. Transporting him to the police station in a safe manner is also important. General safety. Documenting all actions and evidence is also important to the safety of all involved. These documentations will be used in legal proceedings that is by telling the suspect both to calm down and to understand why he was acting out. Verbal commands are appropriate when the suspect's behavior is disrupted but not immediately physical. Physical restraint become necessary when book refuse to comply with verbal commands and escalated this behavior. How should officers ensure the safety of both the suspect and the public? Public safety. The officers immediately work to ensure the scene, pushing back to the crowd and creating space to prevent further injuries. Being acted quickly to restrain both, minimizing the time it could cause harm. They gathered witness statements to have accurate accounts of the events. Suspect safety. Even while restraining both, the officers needed to avoid excessive force, using only what was necessary to subdue the him. After uncuffing both, they needed to monitor his condition, checking for injuries and ensuring he could breathe properly. Day 4.
Good morning, ma'am. My name is James Sosolio. This is my reflection for my scenario. First is when should officer use verbal commands versus physical restraint? Officers should start with verbal commands to calm the suspect, establish control, and prevent further escalation. They should use a firm but not threatening tone, giving clear instructions. Second is physical restraint. Should only be used if the suspect becomes a physical threat to themselves, the officer, or the public. If verbal commands fail and the suspect continues to throw objects or becomes violent, restraint might be necessary to ensure safety. Second question is, what legal basis allows for an arrest in this scenario?
What legal basis allows for an arrest in this scenario? The suspect's action may justify arrest under law against disorderly conduct, assault, disturbing the peace, or failure to comply with police orders. Pers- Officers must have probable cause. How should officers ensure the safety of the suspect and the public? Secure the public by creating distance, de-escalate with the suspect, using calm communication. If force is needed, ensure it is proportional and follow proper procedure. When should officers use verbal commands versus physical restraint? Use verbal commands first to de-escalate the situation. If the suspect remains aggressive and possesses a threat, physical restraint may be necessary, but only with minimal force.